Hey everybody, and welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy, a weekly video game news podcast broadcasting live Fridays 7 to 8 p.m. on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. We talk about all sorts of video game news. It is Friday, February 9th, I believe. I am your host, Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Booge.
And we're going to be talking about all sorts of news today, including stuff about Mon Hunters. We're going to talk about the dreaded Yeti. Later, after that, we'll be talking about Bandicoot Namco, followed by Parisian court systems, followed by cowboys in video games, followed by the Swedes, followed by Toad's disgusting head. And we're going to round out the show by talking about games that have just come out and games that are about to come out. It's February.
That was a hell of a rundown.
I know. Isn't it good? Let's get started with some Pokemon hunters.
Pokemon!
In our first story, Monster Hunter World is now the fastest selling game in Capcom's history.
Tis. Why don't you read this one real quick, Lex, because I got to switch my headphones out. They're breaking on me.
Wah, wah. The title says it all. Monster Hunter World came out, I want to say, 2 weeks ago, thereabouts. And man, is it selling like gangbusters. It turns out all you needed to do to make Monster Hunter successful was not only put it on handhelds. It's crazy, but...
Yeah, actually put it out on a real system.
Yeah, put it on a real system, and all those people who own that system will buy it. I think there was a lot of concern, because Monster Hunter was on PS2, as I recall.
Probably?
Yeah, one of them. And there was a lot of concern in recent years, and the reason why it was only on handhelds is because it had such a huge fan base in the Nation of the Rising Sun, but not so much in...
The Nihon?
The Nippon, excuse you. But not so much in the old gun-toting US of A. Or Europe, for that matter. And we don't pay attention to Latin America, but I'm sure they count for something. And I think there was a worry that it wouldn't achieve enough popularity there to port it to a modern generation console. But Capcom just decided to take the gamble and go for it, and from what I heard from people who had gotten the game and have been playing it nonstop ever since, is that it is a very, very well put together Monster Hunter game. And it turns out everybody's interested in hunting monsters.
Everyone loves them hunting them monsters, Lex. It's so weird because, like you said, I think a huge part of why it's doing so well is because, like you said, you just had to put it out on a major console. I looked it up, actually. The original Monster Hunter was on PS2 back in 2004. But it's one of those weird things where even if you never played Monster Hunter, even if you've never played it, you know the name Monster Hunter. Like, everyone that plays games knows that franchise. It's just that they might not have played it. So it has huge name cachet, I think. And it just had, like, I think everyone knows a friend that is huge into Monster Hunter. And they're just that person, like, oh, I was really into Monster Hunter, I guess. But, like, and this one's finally one that comes around and it's like, well, I got the hardware anyways, and I got a friend that's playing it, and it's really pretty, and fuck it, why not play it, you know? And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. I also think the timing of its release was pretty crucial. It's right after the holidays. People are kind of... decompressing from all like the games that came out in October and November, all the Switch games and stuff, and then this just kind of slides right in, and it's like, yeah, this is something for you and your friends to play and kind of grind out for a little while, kind of the way like Destiny did. And I think that it just slips right in, and bada boom, bada bing, you got the fastest selling game ever.
I think that it really did hit that sweet spot of when it was released, because it was just long enough for people's wallets to refill a little bit.
Yeah.
After the holiday season, but also, I mean, we're pretty much in one of the deadest times of the year. It's like now and like late summer. Usually there isn't very much because it's like everything's holding off until fall releases. Are like the really dead times, so coming out now is just a great idea. It reminds me of the master stroke of Deadpool 1 and its release in theaters on Valentine's Day, which is traditionally like when movies are not coming out, especially not that kind of movie.
Yeah.
So
no, and we didn't. This is good for Monster Hunter fans because this means they'll get more. Because there was one story actually that I was going to put in the run up and then I didn't. It was about how Capcom Vancouver is basically like cutting out like 30 to 50% of its workforce and it's downsizing. It's downsizing the next Dead Rising, and like they cancel the game and all this stuff. It's like all bad news for Capcom. So they have this on the other hand, which is gonna make them definitely look favorably to new Monster Hunter games in the future.
Yeah, and considering how good this one seems to be, we're all hoping that that's what happens.
And this is before a PC release as well. So,
oh yeah, it hasn't come out on PC yet, has it?
yep. And I know at least 5 people that are going to be all up in this game when it comes out, which means I'll probably have to do that too and play with them.
So, I'm dying.
You're right there, Lex.
I'm dying. I'm dead. I can't keep doing the show. Let's talk about mythical creatures.
With my co-host, Lex's corpse.
It just cuts to a shot of a skeleton in a chair.
Yeah.
In front of a very nice analog condenser microphone. So, the Google has apparently been working on a gaming hardware streaming service beast called the Yeti. I mean, I'm sure it's just its code name. Who knows what its name is ultimately going to be, though I would like its final name to be Yeti.
Sure.
Because I think it's actually, like, a great name. But, yeah, this is interesting. This is not, as I thought it was when I first saw the article, about a piece of hardware. Excuse me. This is actually about a piece of tech that allows you to stream via the cloud. The Chrome cloud.
The cloud.
The cloud. I'm dying. So this kind of technology has actually been around for a while. I remember reporting on it when it was first hitting the news some time ago, and when it was in its infancy, it was one of those things that maybe a little bit like VR. It came out, it got maybe not as much press as VR, but some very positive press, with people saying, oh, this is the future of gaming, just streaming games. And then a bunch of companies tried to do this, and it wasn't good because the technology to stream high-res gaming wasn't there.
Correct.
But now that technology is much more feasible, and apparently Google is trying to take advantage of it and use it to create a streaming service that is subscription-based, which sounds, at least according to this reporting, very, very similar to something like what has just been done with Game Pass.
Yes. This is, what was the first company that tried to do that and it kind of flopped? It was like, OnLive, or no, shit, I can't remember. But it was one of those early game streaming programs that didn't really work because, like you said, you can't stream HD. You couldn't stream HD stuff back then and have it really work. And then you had PlayStation by Gaikai a long time ago. That became PlayStation Now. And then now, you have the Xbox Game Pass, and now Google. And I think that this is the thing that will make this idea work, this streaming service, is you just have to have the bigger companies behind it. You just have to have huge companies with lots of money. I mean, if anyone can pull this off, it's Google. Like, legitimately, because they have the infrastructure and they have the money out the ass to do something like this. So it's interesting. They mentioned this in the article. One thing that I think is interesting is that they wanted to play over Chromecast, and they're like, even though there doesn't seem to be any way to attach a controller to Chromecast, so who knows what kind of solution they're going to have there. But I dove into this a little bit deeper, and there are also rumors of them having been dabbling with coming out with a box, an actual piece of hardware that can do something like this, something probably similar to like a Steam box or something like that.
Something a controller can actually connect to.
Right, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see, but like I am still super hyped, and we talked about this on another show. I'm super hyped for that future if it comes true, the Xbox Game Pass, Netflix kind of situation for games. And it seems like these big companies are putting their toe in the water to try to make this future work. And I'm down. I'm down to ride that wave.
Yeah, no, I think that would be awesome because it means we don't have to invest in expensive hardware or software. But I think the hardware is really the barrier point certainly for me, I think for a lot of other people as well. And then brick and mortar game stores will finally die, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there are some mom and pop brick and mortar game stores that I would feel really bad if they went away. But
Sure.
all of the big ones, and by that I mean the big one, is just awful, and I don't want
It's
them
all-
to exist anymore.
No, yeah, it's like Voldemort. He who shall not be named game store is yeah. It's just a miserable experience to go in there, and it's like it's interesting because like we talked about this before that like some mom and pop shops will always exist as long as they diversify into like collectibles, retro gaming, hard to find stuff, and if they like organize events and stuff like that, they'll always be boutique shops for video games. Unfortunately, they don't work the same way that game store D&D game stores work, where you can't really. It's hard to gather people around to get excited about something if there's no game to be played in the store. You know what I mean? Like if you're just like, hey, new game's coming out, everyone just hang out in the store and wait till it releases. I guess like that's not very fun, but. Generally speaking, yeah, I think that, I just want to sit on my couch or in front of my computer and not have to go to the game store to do anything. So if Google and Xbox makes that easier, then hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down to clown.
Down to clown.
As they say in...
in the good old gun-toting US of A.
Yeah, in the Hatchet crew.
They're a gang.
Yeah?
FBI said so. Has to be true.
Really?
Didn't you hear about that? The FBI classified them as a gang. I think there was a different term for it, but basically a gang. And they actually went and marched to Washington being like, "Hey, you can't stereotype us like
yes.
that." Yeah, you remember.
I do remember that. Yes, the Juggalos on the march. Fago all the way to to Washington D.C.
Okay, that was what a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
Let's talk about. If this webpage loads properly, let's talk about Metroid Prime 4.
Yes, let's do it. So this is from Eurogamer, and I have to say, is it just me or does Eurogamer always have the tiniest text compared to any other game website?
Oh yeah, I mean one of the things I do for the podcast is I zoom in on the webpage for recording so people can read it when it's on stream. But I have to zoom way farther into Eurogamer than most other websites.
I guess Europeans just have better eyesight or something, but whatever. So this is from Tom Phillips. Internet rumors this week pegged Bandai Namco as being the mystery studio behind Metroid Prime 4, something multiple sources have now confirmed to Eurogamer as being accurate. Specifically, the highly anticipated Nintendo Switch exclusive is being developed by Bandai Namco Studio Singapore, which we understand is a lead studio on the game in collaboration with Nintendo. The studio houses some former LucasArts Singapore staff who previously worked on, among other things, the ambitious canceled Star Wars 1313. Metroid Prime was showed off at E3 2017, and they just showed the logo, and fans lost their shit because, of course, they did, including myself. They get this information. So this week, fans began joining the dots, not connecting the dots. Eurogamer.
Europeans.
Spelling color with a U and all that shit. This week, fans began joining the dots with various teasing job descriptions when various teasing job descriptions were spotted on LinkedIn. Rumors began appearing on forums like Reset Era and were then widely reported elsewhere. In particular, Press Start noted how Bandai Namco Studio Singapore staff members had not tried very hard to conceal what they had been working on, something exciting. Looking through their game profiles, I saw staff saying that they were working on a quote-unquote secret game, a quote-unquote ambitious AAA title, a quote-unquote very interesting unannounced project, and a game which will see quote-unquote more exciting details announced quote-unquote soon or later.
Or later.
Or later. It'll be announced real soon or not. One staff member in particular, a lead designer, described themselves as working on quote-unquote an unannounced IP, first-person shooter adventure exclusive on the Nintendo Switch. The staff member also listed themselves as overseeing work on the exclusive Ridge Racer 8 for Switch 2, something Eurogamer has yet to verify. This is interesting. I'm sure that a lot of people are upset that it's not Retro Studios who made the first couple Metroid games, Metroid Prime games, I should say. But Bandai Namco Bandai, I don't know which way they're saying it these days. This is not the first time that they've worked with Nintendo. They developed Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS and the Wii U. And apparently they did a Pokken tournament game for Wii U and Switch.
Ooh.
So, it's Interesting. Metroid, man, you know what? Do you like Metroid? Are you a Metroid fan?
I like it. I'm not good at it, but I still like it.
Sure, sure. I'm a huge Metroid fan. Always have been since like Super Metroid. And it just always gets the shit end of the stick from Nintendo, generally speaking. Besides when they get lucky, I think, and hand it off to Retro, which at the time. You have to remember that when they announced that there was an American company from Texas working on a Metroid game, people were up in arms about that. They're like, "Oh my god, this is, kill me now. This is horrible." Like people were so upset about it, and it turned out to be great. So you sometimes, you can't always judge a book by its cover. However, then they gave it to Team Ninja. They made Metroid Other M, which was a fucking pile of steaming crap. And then and now handing it off to Bandai Namco. So who knows? Who knows how that'll go? I mean, they're a big company, so I'm sure that they've got the talent for it, at least.
Team Ninja is really hit or miss, aren't they? Because they've done some great stuff, and they've also done some awful stuff.
Yep.
It's really weird.
Do you remember? Oh my god, Other M. I could hear the baby Metroid. Oh god, it was so stupid.
Bandai Namco obviously responsible for the Idol Master series.
Oh sure,
they're most notable for that, I believe.
Yes, that is really their flagship series.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly not anything else. But no. This is good news. I mean, I think it would be. I feel like Bandai Namco has a more consistent track record than like Team Ninja, because again, like I was saying, it's you give a project like that to Team Ninja, and you'd assume that would just be good, that would be a great idea, but then for some reason it worked out horribly, giving it to a notable studio. So giving it to Bandai Namco sounds like a great idea, and it should work out great. So hopefully it doesn't backfire on them like it did last time.
Totally, and I think that one thing to note that it does say that a lot of the staff on the Singapore team that's working on this was working on Star Wars 1313. That's interesting because it's. I mean, we never saw much of Star Wars 1313, but it looked like a sci-fi game, action game. So at least they have some kind of track record, with dealing with that kind of stuff. So hopefully they can join the dots and make it work.
Whatever that means, Europeans.
Whatever that means. Jeez, go drink some wine.
Live longer, why don't you?
Yeah, why don't you just have a longer,
healthier life, better labels on your food, eating better,
your free healthcare,
for your free healthcare, better minimum wage.
Jeez, getting my guns and my burgers and my depression.
Yeah, better overall rate of happiness than the rest of the developed world. Jeez.
Why can't I join the dots on why that's a good idea?
So, speaking of Europeans, let's talk about some Parisians for a minute.
Oh, oui, monsieur.
Oh, man. Oh, my webpage is loading again. Here we go. Quantic Dream. Ever heard of them? Ever heard of David Cage?
Not recently.
Ever heard of Nick Cage?
I have heard of Nick Cage.
Well, Nick Cage isn't involved in the story. Sorry, but
shit.
we are talking about David Cage's studio Quantic Dream, responsible for such hits as Heavy Rain and Indigo Prophecy and Beyond: Two Souls.
Sure.
And wow, those games. So they're making Detroit Become Human, and several weeks ago we reported on how there were allegations against the studio of sexual harassment, of a general toxic work environment for women, and also for really long and unforgiving work schedules. Now, the really long and unforgiving work schedule I only mention because I think to us Americans, that sounds like, well, yeah, that's how game studios are. That's how they work.
You grind until you lose your hair and your family life goes to shit.
Mm-hmm, yeah, definitely. But apparently, that actually, the main thing that's a factor in this story is the sexual harassment. But I want to point out that the work conditions are also a factor in the story, and I think the main reason for that is because Europeans and how much they care about their workers. But I'm bearing the lead here. We're talking about the Paris Council and how they just launched an investigation into Quantic Dream, and specifically the public funding that they give to Quantic Dream to make games in Paris. So I don't know if you're familiar, this happens in the US a little bit as well, but major cities will give incentives for game studios to work in them because they want the jobs that they will bring.
Yes.
And usually this is a tax incentive, but sometimes they will actually just give them money. Let's see, I'm pretty sure that we're just talking about tax incentive here, that this article contained from PlayStation Lifestyle includes the entire Paris Council statement, which is awfully long, but it talks about the percentage. So they say, let me just read you the beginning of this thing. Considering that a society cannot call itself democratic if it does not place equality and fraternity of its citizens, which is therefore the fight against racism, sexism, and homophobia a national as well as local priority, and considering attachment from the city to these fights. So yeah, this is a legal document translated from French, so yeah.
Take it with all of the Google Translate grain of salt that you can.
They're talking about how they're not happy with this company after these allegations have surfaced, and they want to cut the tax credit they'd be giving them. They say this.
They're going to launch an investigation to see.
Yes. They say this company benefits from a 20% tax credit, a 20% development cost, and many other benefits, but it has the obligation to respect the social laws. So this is them basically saying, like, hey, if you're guilty of any of these harassment claims, you're not going to get money from us. And we're going to make sure that you are innocent of these claims before we decide to keep giving you money to work in the city. And I can imagine them cutting this funding would be a pretty devastating blow to Quantic Dream, which is not an unprofitable company, but is definitely not like raking in the big bucks. They don't do microtransactions, people, or loot boxes. Come on. So, so I'd imagine that kind of percentage hit would be really significant for them. So they don't want that to happen. Now, I will point out...
I'm sure Sony wouldn't be happy with it.
No, they wouldn't. I will point out that when this story broke initially, Quantic Dream denied it. When people... the allegations was that not only did David Cage say things like people had to refer to him as like God or something, and keep to these like super insane schedules, but also that there were these pictures circulating the office of Cage and then other people working with the office photoshopped onto like pornography and stuff. First they said no, that's true, and then people were like, well, here are the pictures, and then they're like, well, a couple people saw those pictures, but we didn't send them to any women on staff. I'm just like, oh, okay. And then there were reports of how it was people specifically in the IT department of this company that didn't have a lot of contact with the other parts, like the other dev teams in the company, were the ones who were bringing this complaint. And then because they felt like they weren't listened to, they all quit. And then because people at Quantic Dream thought that these people still had an axe to grind, they went to these newspapers so that the newspapers could all do a hit piece on them. And the David Cage and a lot of the other people at Quantic Dream had been maintaining up to this point that it's specifically those ex-employees and the newspapers that were out to get them.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, no, it's not great. And I think that there might have been some validity. I can't remember exactly, but I feel like there was something that happened in the past between their studio and those newspapers as well. So there was actually like some reason for the newspapers to not like them going forward.
Sure.
But apparently, I think a few days ago, Quantic Dream said they were going to like try and sue or something over this because they were because of I don't know if it would be referred to as defamation in the French legal system, but
j'accuse.
Yes, I think that's what they call it. Is just that. So let's see. Another quote here: considering the insufficiency of labor inspectors as well as the questioning of labor code undermine the respect of employees and can contribute to the development of these toxic cultures of business.
Damn.
Man, this is translated. Okay, so
what we can take away is that France does not fuck around.
No, it seems like the Parisian Council believes the accusations in these newspapers and are taking them very, very seriously.
Yeah, and they throw some serious fucking mud in their wording.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard to tell because it's hard to tell because of that translation, but it seems like they're awfully upset.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, this is one of those things that it's like, at least in America, innocent until proven guilty, and I'm pretty sure in France too. So it is tough to say completely like, oh, fucking David Cage and Quantic Dream, bury him, burn Paris to the ground. Like, it's hard to immediately, jump to that craziness. But good for the Paris Council for launching an investigation. And like, I think this will be a good sign because as far as I know, this is the first like big sexual allegation thing in the video game industry that's being handled at like a top level of law, I guess, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's actually being like an investigation's being launched and they're going to figure the stuff out. I think it's good when it all shakes out. If they're guilty or innocent, it will set a precedent where it's like, okay, now we know how to handle these kind of things, or at least the kind of, I guess, the tone of how these things should be handled. Does that make sense? Am I kind of, I don't know.
I think it sort of. I mean, I think it sets a tone in Europe.
Sure.
It's because to me it looks like the difference between the way the American government functions and the way a lot of European governments function. And not to get too political with this, but it seems like if a similar thing happened with an American company, I feel like you wouldn't see the city council looking to pull any kind of money from them.
True.
Because
that's true. I mean, I don't think this kind of thing's ever happened in the United States.
Yeah.
In terms of the video game industry.
Mm-hmm. Because I think that the big difference between the U.S. government and a lot of these European governments is the U.S. government just like looks at business in a very different way. They kind of say, okay, are you profitable? Are you employing people? Is your business running well? Cool. We don't care what you're doing.
Right. It's a more laissez-faire attitude.
Which is funny because laissez-faire is a French word.
Hey, shit, they got us.
But in Europe, they're much more about worker and consumer protections.
Yes.
So I think they are going to react more harshly to something like this.
Yeah. I think that. I mean, you only have to look at something like when we were dealing with the loot boxalypse, which we have some, we actually have some more European news on that, or some Scandinavian news at least. When the whole like Star Wars Battlefield meltdown was happening, and like a lot of people were like, should the government step in or not? And the government does not step in because I think the United States government in general, we have a history of letting markets sort themselves out, let the pieces fall where they may, and I think it works most of the time. But with stuff like this, I think if you are in this particular case where you're getting funding, yeah, I think that it doesn't matter if it's Europe or the United States. The people that are giving the funding should step in and see where their money's going, because if all this stuff's true and there's really if working at Quantic Dream is this shitty for some people, then it's something that should be immediately tackled and probably dismantled. I was actually looking up, though, does Sony own Quantic Dream outright?
I didn't think they did, but they might. I'm not sure.
I know that they only publish for Sony, obviously. So I actually wonder what I think that Sony. I don't think they own them outright, but I think that Sony probably funds a lot of their projects, or at least helps fund. So I wonder what they have to think about all this in terms of where they're going to be punished or not in this whole scenario.
I mean, I think Sony's big enough that they can just sort of cut and run if they want to.
Probably. See you later, David Cage.
Yeah. And
bonjour.
And I mean, side note, I'm biased in this story because man, do I hate David Cage. I just
like
hate his work. Whenever I watch interviews with him, I'm like, oh god, he sucks so much.
Is it just because of the pretentiousness?
Yeah, it's mostly because of the pretentiousness, and maybe that goes hand in hand with being French. I don't know.
No,
but no, I think it's funny because I remember really, really liking Indigo Prophecy for the first hour that I played it and being like, man, this is so cool. This is such a cool idea. And then the farther I got into the game, the more I'm like, no, this is dumb. This is just really, really dumb. And then every game I've ever tried to play of his since, I've just looked at it and been like, oh, this is so dumb.
I like the memes that Heavy Rain created.
I mean, yeah.
Like yelling Jason constantly. It's very funny to me. Jason!
Especially when Jason is right next to the character.
Yeah, Jason! But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've played any of their games because I really haven't owned too many PlayStation products in a while. But yeah, I don't know. I'm conflicted about this one. I hope it all legally sifts out and then the truth comes out and whatever side it may be on.
I just want David Cage to be disgraced. I don't care how.
It's personal for you.
I just hate him so much.
I just want to see the man's life burn, all right?
Yes.
Even though I've never met him.
So, we're going to get back to some more European stuff later, but before we do, let's talk about something so American. It says the term yeehaw all the time.
It's something very American made by a company that is not American. And made by a Scottish company, I think Rockstar is.
Oh, are they Scottish? That's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I mean they have studios all over the place, but Rockstar North, the original ones in Scotland, started in Scotland. That's why they're so, at least in like Grand Theft Auto, they're so harsh on American culture, and like why they kind of parody it so much. It's because they're not American, so they kind of have that perspective. Although I think the Hauser brothers are British, I believe. Could be wrong with that. Anyways, this is from VG247. Red Dead Redemption 2 leaks. Bunch of information. This comes from information received by trusted reviews, which normally I'd be like, that's probably not real. Like, no one knows what that fucking site is. But they released a bunch of pictures. New pictures, screenshots of some characters that look exactly like they're actually from the game. So it's like, okay, that looks like pretty legit. So, according to information received by trusted reviews, the game's protagonist seen in the trailer is Arthur Morgan, and the other big character is Dutch Vanderlyn, the leader of the gang. Excuse me. The single player will offer complete freedom in exploring the open world, which includes Armadillo and Ridgewood. Cities will be buzzing with NPCs, and there's going to be a slums market where equipment is sold at a reduced price. You'll be able to use trains to travel from certain parts of the map, and the trains themselves will act as mini cities with unique characters and dialogue. Other vehicles in the game will include horse-drawn carriages, minecarts, handcarts, with each coming with various variants that favor speed over armor and vice versa. You can do poker, horsemanship challenges. I didn't know horsemanship was a word. Apparently it is. Horsemanship challenges increase your rider rank. A deep fishing system. Fuck yeah, with different baits and fish types. Let me tell you, Lex. I don't like crafting systems in games.
Oh yeah,
very much. But if you put a fishing system in a game, I'm gonna be all up in it.
Nice. What about golf simulation?
I love golf simulation.
There you go.
I love golf games. It's not even a lie. I legitimately love them. Where was I? Yes, so there's going to be fishing systems, poker, horsemanship, crafting systems where you can use plants and others to create various concoctions. There's going to be a first-person mode, very similar to GTA 5's release on PS4 and Xbox One. You'll be able to use it in single player and multiplayer. There's Deadeye is also returning. There's going to be something similar to the Strangers and Freaks missions from GTA 5 in the game, which consists of random events that'll lead you down bizarre quest lines. And probably the news that's completely unsurprising, but is also just like, all right, is that for GTA Online, it seems like it's going to operate extremely similarly to GTA 5 Online, because that game sells gangbusters still years later. So
Somehow.
why would they make anything different? They give some cool examples, like NPCs will decorate storefronts in the morning and pack everything up in the evening. Player apartments will return in the form of tents, which can be bought and upgraded like GTA Online. Completing various tasks will earn you XP, and many of the shops and NPCs in the world will offer missions and equipment. And then they mention that the playlist format is returning, and the memo mentions 3 game modes in Battle Royale, Revive and Survive, and Money Grab. It only details the latter 2, and the site is not sure how the iteration of Battle Royale is going to work within the Red Dead sandbox. So we get Red Dead Redemption 2 Battle Royale, because it's 2018. Of course we do. Of course that's a thing.
PUBG and Cowboy PUBG.
Yeehaw, motherfucker. They go on to say Revive and Survive is a death match where 2 teams will go against each other. You can revive fallen teammates. You only have a limited window to do so. Money Grab takes players with securing bags of cash and returning them to the base as quickly as possible. And finally, the memo says that Red Dead Redemption 2 will launch alongside a companion app that includes social elements and a poker minigame. Holy shit. Unsurprisingly, this game sounds huge. Sounds like a big old chunk of video game. Which of course it is, because, they're spending, I'm sure, hundreds of millions of dollars making this thing, so it's got to be the biggest thing in the world, and it probably will be, because it's a Rockstar game, and that's what they do. I don't think they make anything less than the biggest games in the world.
Nothing less than the biggest game.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I did not realize they weren't American, and now the more I think about it, the more annoyed I am that they make all the games that they do.
Why?
Well, because like you were saying earlier, it's like, they can talk about that. That's why they do all this stuff about American culture, because they're not American. And I'm like, but it's insulting if they're not American. It's interesting and introspective if they're American.
I don't know. I think everyone has the right to shit on America if they want.
I mean, America does suck pretty bad.
You sure?
Yeah. No.
I think that's the theme of this show. this episode of Don't Copy That Blog.
Yeah, it's all about how Europe is better. Everything is better in Europe.
No, that's actually something, like the fact that they are Scottish or British is what I think is actually interesting, because I think that's what makes it a little more transgressive than it would be. Because if it was made by like a company in New York or something, well, here's the deal: is that Rockstar is no longer just a Scottish company anymore. They're a worldwide.
No, they have
company,
offices all over. Yeah.
Yeah. And Red Dead Redemption is, in fact, I think, primarily made in Rockstar San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, is it the San Diego studios? I can't remember. But it's in America. And actually, that's interesting, because when you think about it, because if you played Red Dead 1, it is definitely much more respectful of the kind of American history of, like, the Wild West and stuff. Like, it takes it a little more seriously than Grand Theft Auto does. So, that's an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, I don't know. Regardless, I'm super fucking hyped for this game. I love the Wild West. Lex, I don't know if you knew that about me.
Love it. You'll have golf and Wild West.
Yeah, you're just about right. So I'm super hyped for this game. I loved the first one. I really, really liked it. I like that game a lot better than most Grand Theft Auto games. So it's just more my speed. The unfortunate thing is I'm gonna have to buy a fucking console for this game. I'm gonna have to buy a console for this one game.
I mean, won't it? It'll come out on PC eventually, right? Because that's what they inevitably did with GTA, and we know that the online function of GTA with PC users is pretty lucrative for them. So I would assume that they would eventually bring Red Dead to PC
I figure probably they never brought the first one to PC.
No, but the first one didn't have this online component that the second one's going to have, and I think
It did. It had an online.
Oh,
game.
did it?
Yep.
Didn't realize that.
It
That's
wasn't. It
interesting.
wasn't like a GTA Online style thing, but it had the same kind of thing that GTA 5 had, which it had like deathmatch modes and team deathmatches and shit like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty fun actually. But yeah, I think that I'm sure that they've seen the amount of money that GTA 5 gained them on PC, so I think eventually it'll come. I'm just gonna have to just sit and wait until it comes out, unfortunately. So yeah,
Too
I don't know.
bad.
Did you like the first Red Dead? Did you play it?
I played it very briefly at a friend's house and I enjoyed it. I don't actually care for Wild West themed stuff. It's never been something that's piqued my interest. So I was like,
Sure.
oh, I recognize that this is a beautiful and extremely well crafted video game, but it's in a genre I do not care for. So, meh. Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Oh, I don't know if you checked your Discord messages, but please do that.
I did, and you sound actually crackly on my end.
Blah, 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 blah.
Might be good old Discord shitting the bed again. But yeah, I'll jump in and jump out.
Thanks, Discord. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Swedes. Sweden. If my page ever loads, there we go. I don't know why my internet's been doing this today. Ooh, look at that! Look at that turkey. Fantastic.
That's a chicken.
Oh, whatever. Use tomato. Get out of here. So, loot boxes. They're a big deal. Sweden, apparently, according to PC Gamer from 2 days ago, could classify loot boxes as gambling by early 2019. Now, this is we've been talking about the loot box stuff, oh gosh, for a while now.
Forever, my whole life.
Right after the big controversy with the Battlefront. And I mean, before that a little bit, but it really kicked into high gear with that. And lawmakers started taking notice at that point. And we had some European lawmakers wanting to do something about it, and then we had a Hawaiian lawmaker talking about it. I don't think that's going to gain much traction in the U.S., but it's nice to hear people from Hawaii talking about it. And in Europe, they actually are trying to do something. So right now, what was he called? His name? This name. Ardalan Shekarabi.
Sure.
Probably butchered that pretty bad. The country's Minister of Public Administration told P3 News that loot boxes could be classified as a form of gambling by 2019, which would subject them to more stringent regulations under Swedish law. He is quoted as saying, "We are working to regain control of the gambling market as soon as possible and to make sure that Swedish consumer protection laws apply to all actors which conduct gambling activities." So right now, under Swedish law, loot boxes are not considered gambling. I don't think they're considered gambling anywhere currently. But a lot of people do think of them as gambling because they sort of tap into the same section of the brain that gambling games tend to. So this idea that you're going to spend some money to get a loot box and maybe you're going to get that really cool thing you want, but you probably won't. So then you'll have to spend a little more money to get another loot box, hoping that you'll randomly get that thing you want. Very similar to the way a slot machine works.
Yeah. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. Come on, baby. And then you pull the lever and
put it all on red.
Put it all on red. I'll mortgage my house to get this loot box.
Oh no! So in America, they mostly don't care, except sort of in Hawaii. But in Sweden, they're legitimately worried about this. I mean, I don't remember when we did this, but I think it was around that the CS:GO skin controversy. There was a whole article that came out interviewing different people who are addicted to buying these skins on these gambling websites. And it was like teenage kids who had gotten access to like their parents' or grandparents' credit cards and were just doing this and like couldn't stop. Or it was young adults to adults who were like whittling away their life savings because they couldn't stop doing this. And it was very eerily familiar, or very eerily similar to the stories we hear from gambling addicts from traditional forms of gambling. So, I think these Swedish lawmakers are looking at stuff like that and saying, hey, we should really look into regulating this like gambling, since it seems to affect people in a similar way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I think loot boxes are gambling, like in the purest sense, in the most like basic sense of the word. You know, you are paying for something where you do not know the result, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you mostly lose, and you're paying real money. I think that's gambling, like no doubt about it.
Oh, I should specifically point out that Sweden is looking into FIFA and their loot boxes, which is just another one of the most European things they could be doing, because it's like, oh, we could be looking into Star Wars Battlefront, or we could be looking into like Call of Duty, but no, we're in Europe, so we care about FIFA the most.
Yeah, the football is going to be corrupting our children.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've said this before, and I know it's probably not the most liked opinion, but like, I just hate governmental powers getting into my video game industry. I don't want it. I know it's for a good reason, and I know that they mean well, kind of, probably. Some of them, maybe. I think a lot of it, honestly, is political posturing, like that senator from Hawaii.
That's definitely what that was. Oh, yes.
Like that, he was not doing that he was doing that because he's probably his term's coming up or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, that's the way I always feel. I don't know anything about Swedish politics and Swedish internal kind of governmental control of things. I don't know how that works. So they might be a little bit more pure, but I know that in America, politicians do things not for the reasons that they say they're doing them. I think that's also known as lying. But
what?
Oh no, they're listening. But there's just oftentimes you have these things where it's like, you know, I don't imagine that many lawmakers over the age of, I don't know, 45 have any idea kind of the nuances of the gaming industry or how loot boxes are affecting people. So a lot of it, I feel like when they do make these stances, it's a blind moral stance to try to get like angry parents on their side more than anything, probably. But that is one side of my mind. The other side of my mind is, yeah, it is really shitty, and someone should regulate it. If it's the companies themselves, or if it's some third-party kind of judicial, or not judicial, but like a kind of like a boards of ways and means or something, you know, like an oversight committee or something like that, then maybe that's the way it should go. But I'm still conflicted on it. It's a week of conflictions, Lex. Conflicted on the news.
Conflicting European stories.
Yeah.
Let's finally
Europeans just leave me conflicted ever since, I don't know, World War I.
Oh, that's all right. 100 years. 100 years.
It's been a long time in my 29-year-old life.
Yep. So let's finally move away from Europe. Let's finally move out of Europe and move to Japan.
Sure. To answer a question, this is fuck loot boxes and like all, and you know, sexual harassment. This is the story. This is the news we need, Lex. All right.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the world needs to hear. Nintendo confirms. It is confirmed that Toad's mushroom top is his actual head.
I love the byline of the story, which is strangely that leaves us with more questions than answers.
It does, because the way that they answered it is, well, we'll get to it. Super Mario Odyssey producer Yoshiaki Koizumi, I think that's how you pronounce it, recently posted a Dev Talk video in which he addressed the kind of questions that only seem to surround Nintendo games. Chief among those questions was a query regarding whether or not Toad's mushroom top is a hat or his actual head. That might sound ridiculous, but you have to admit that you've probably asked yourself a version of that question at some point. The topic has reached a fever pitch of debate ever since Super Mario Odyssey made hats a canonical part of the Mario universe. According to Koizumi, though, Toad's headgear is something that he was born with, and this is his quote. So that, as it turns out, is actually Toad's head, said Koizumi. I'm going to have to leave it to all of you to figure out exactly how that works. Maybe there's something inside. The fuck does that mean, Koizumi-san? Come on. What's inside then?
That's so weird. Because it's like, I don't know if it's his actual head, then what's inside it is his brain.
Yeah, his mushroom-shaped brain.
Because if he had said it was a hat, and then he said, I'll leave it up to you to see if there's something inside, that's like a quote that makes way more sense. Because it's like, oh, what's he hiding under his hat? That's a fun thing. But if it's his head, then like, no, I mean, what? Does he have a tumor? Like, what are we talking about here?
Maybe there's something inside it, and it's really going to be quite depressing when you find out. Unfortunately, he's late-stage brain tumor. Yeah, but I don't know. I think that's probably a little bit of a weird translation issue. But it's great. It's wonderful. They continue on they talk about some other things. The video also addresses a couple other topics that we know are near and dear to the darkest thoughts of Nintendo fans everywhere. For instance, it turns out that the reason Mario has nipples but no belly button in Super Mario Odyssey is because of a possible design oversight. Quote, well, to be perfectly honest, I didn't really expect that to be a topic among fans, said Koizumi on the nipple belly button debate. Once I heard that people were talking so much about Mario's belly button, it made me start to think about whether we should revisit that topic on the design side.
It's so amusing to me because of how weirdly naive and pure these developers sound. Yeah. I just thought it was so weird that people on the internet were talking about something like that. Maybe we should look into it. And I'm like, no, of course people on the internet are talking about that. Of course they are. They need to know how their Rule 34 stuff is supposed to look.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that you need this stuff if you're going to be making Slash Fic with Sonic, you know?
Of course Sonic is in there. I think the big upset is when Banjo-Kazooie comes in and steals Peach. That's the big thing.
That is the big thing. These are the burning questions of the day. Like, why doesn't Mario have a belly button? And is Sonic's eye just one eye with two pupils?
Because it's certain. And some of the art does kind of look like that.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't stop. It's just one eyeball, which is a terrifying thought. A lot of people think that it's actually Kirby in there. It's Kirby in like a flesh suit.
Yeah.
See, it makes you think. But and then you add sex to that, and we're all having a good time. But Koizumi asked that players know. I think they meant to say not. Koizumi asked players that players not pry into the personal life of Mario by questioning the nature of the Mario Peach Pauline relationship dynamic.
Whoa! That's okay? So you could make an argument that Mario's belly button, or whether Toad's head is a hat or his head, you could make an argument to whether that's central or not to the game. But Mario rescues Peach every freaking game. You can't argue that his relationship dynamic with her and Pauline is not important.
I know it is. It's really key. I think that I think that people are thinking maybe Mario's cheating on Peach with Pauline. Because it says, so far as that goes, we'll just say that Pauline is the mayor of a major metropolitan world and clearly likes hats as much as Mario. Peach, meanwhile, only calls when she's been kidnapped.
Oh my god!
And if I may, sir, add my 2 cents about this, I will say that maybe Mario should go with Pauline. Like, maybe Peach has been fucking. It's like, what does he get really from the Peach relationship besides grief? Because she really is. The only time that she ever gives him a kiss or anything is when she's being captured by a giant, like, Koopa monster.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, how much do we see... How much... What is their relationship like in the parts that the audience doesn't see when they're not on adventures? Maybe they have a wonderful home life when she's not kidnapped. Well, we don't know.
I mean, she's royalty, and he's in plumbing. I don't think she treats him very well. He's still wearing overalls.
He's still wearing overalls. I mean, he got that nice hat in the new game, but that wasn't from her.
That's true. But why isn't he a prince yet? Why isn't he King Regent Mario?
Yeah, he's really got to work on that.
Yeah. So I'd say ditch the princess, go for the ambitious politician.
Who is Luigi with?
What's her name? Daisy.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Huh.
Yeah. That's a whole subplot in the live-action Mario movie.
Yes, the canonical live-action Mario movie.
Totally, yeah. Where she has a chunk of meteorite around her neck, turns into sand.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Long live that movie.
John Leguizamo.
Yeah. So what's inside Toad's head is still up for debate, but it is his head.
But it is his head. What's inside his head is more head.
It's another head. It's a rushing nesting doll of Japanese horrors. Anyways, that's that.
Okay, let's talk about games.
Surely.
Everyone, games.
Games.
So, we had Shadow of the Colossus come out for PS4 earlier this week.
Yes.
And I've heard some positive things about it, but mostly just that it's really pretty, which is what we all expected.
Yeah.
A lot of the things, because we had talked about it before it came out, talking about how it they didn't change the controls or any of the mechanical parts of the game, just the graphics. And a lot of the reviews I've seen of it has said, "Oh, it's great. It's exactly the same, except it looks prettier." And I'm like, I don't know why you think that's great, but
yeah. I mean, I guess you don't want to mess with it too much, but because it's a classic and all that shit.
Yeah,
but
people would definitely be upset.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like it's a classic, but it came out a long time ago, and video games don't age. Most video games don't age well,
unless you're Crash Bandicoot, and then you sell
unless you're Crash Bandicoot
like hotcakes.
That's actually something last week that we didn't because you were sick last week. There's basically confirmation that they're making new Crash games. That the Insane Trilogy sold so well that they're going to make new Crash games.
Sweet.
It's 2018. We're getting the fucking Crash Bandicoot game that we deserve.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Let's see what else came out. I don't know.
Civ 6 Rise and Fall. I bought that and played it.
Cool.
It's really fucking good. Really good. If you're into Civ, it adds some really, really cool mechanics to the game.
Today, we had Dragon Quest Builders for the Nintendo Switch. The Seven Deadly Sins, Knights of Britannia, which I can only assume is based off the Seven Deadly Sins anime, but I don't know anything about the game. Or
Britannia from the Ultima series.
Oh, maybe. And Under Night in Birth EXE : late.
Come on, Japan. Come on, cut us some slack, please.
I love it. It's so I
like that its genre is fighting visual novel.
And it's for the Vita.
It's coming to the Vita.
It's coming to the Vita.
Who says no one supports Vita anymore?
Vita game came out today.
Exactly.
Today.
It lives. It means life.
So then on the 13th, we have Dynasty Warriors 9 coming out for Windows, PS4, and Xbone. And, Owlboy is coming out for the Switch.
Finally. That, man, and PS4 and Xbox. That game, I think it's been in development for 8 years.
Ooh.
Huge. Yeah. That game, I didn't even know if it plays really well, but it is fucking gorgeous.
Oh yeah, that game looks amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Let's see what else do we have coming up.
Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology.
Oh, okay. The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Okay.
14th. Secret of Mana for the Vita.
Nice.
Coming out on the 15th.
Why?
Why? Yes, Secret of Mana is getting a Windows and a PS4 re-release. I thought I had heard something about a Secret of Mana remake.
That's what I heard too. Is this?
But I don't think that's what this is. Maybe it is. I don't know. When I go to the page, it just gives me the original Secret of Mana stuff. I'll have to look this up. I would love it if it was a remake. If it's a remake with better graphics, I will buy it for Windows. I would buy it for Vita, but I just don't have that life. So, and then on the 16th, we have Bayonetta 1 and 2 is releasing on the Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal. That'll be cool.
Big deal.
But
the workup for Bayonetta 3.
Yes, but that's it. And then we get into things we'll be talking about next week. But cool. Cool.
Cool.
We're on time for the first time ever. That was probably because I only submitted 3 stories instead of my usual 5 because I didn't have internet until 2 hours before the show.
Yes, you were living several decades in the past. For
I
a
had to
while.
read a book. It was awful.
By candlelight and shoot a bear.
Oh no, I would have never defeated that bear. I'd be dead. So
Amherst Bears.
So anyway, remember, thanks for watching, and
It's a little out of order.
a little out of order. But yeah, not being connected to the internet has really rattled my brain. Anyway, thanks for watching. We have been a weekly video game news podcast broadcasting live Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. If you want to check us out on our lovely benefactor, you can go to chipbit.net, and our show archive is up there. Also, we can be found on iTunes, show archive also up there, and on YouTube, also got a show archive up there. So you can go to those places. You can, especially on iTunes, you can give us a rating and a review. That would be super cool. And if you have an inkling to follow us on social media, you can find us on Facebook or on Twitter at DCTF podcast. Finally, if you have a whole lot of money and want to give to the show, you can go to our Patreon and give us money there. But that is it. Until next time, what do people have to remember?
Je suis, don't copy that floppy.